This is a video by Richmond. Today we're working on a Ford Escort. This happens to be a 1995 model. And what we're doing today is we're replacing the timing belt and water pump. Now the first thing we want to do is jack up the front of the vehicle, put it on jack stands, and we want to take off the right front tire and wheel assembly. The next thing we're going to do is drain the coolant from the system. Now we're going to take the bottom radiator hose, slide the spring clamp back, and pull the hose off. And that will be the easiest way to drain the coolant from the system. Okay, now we need to take the accessory belt off. We can put a breaker bar on the tensioner right here. And then we will pull it forward. And now we can slide the belt off the alternator. Now we can take the belt off. Next we're going to take the tensioner out of the way. It's held on by a 113mm headed bolt. And that will come out just like that. Next we want to put a hydraulic jack underneath the oil pan because we'll be taking out the motor mount to get the timing covers out of the way. Okay, now we got our jack underneath the oil pan, and there are two 17mm nuts that hold on this piece right here, which is a dampener. And we'll remove that, and underneath here you'll see two 17mm nuts. We need to remove those, and then there are some centralizing washers underneath there. We need to remove those, and then we have this through bolt right here. This is a 17mm nut on one side, 17 on the other side. And we can pull that out, and now we can move our mount out of the way. Okay, now we need to take off the crankshaft pulley. I've got the right front wheel and tire out of the way. Now these pulleys aren't pressed on, so they should just slide right off. There we go. Okay, now that we got that bottom pulley out of the way, we should be able to get our timing cover off. It's held on by two 10mm headed nuts. Now I pulled this AC line off to the side to give us some more room. And let us remove that cover. Now before you remove your timing belt, make sure that your timing marks are lined up. You can see that the cam gear right here is lined up. And if we look down here on the bottom, we should be able to see the mark on the crank gear down there, so make sure those are lined up before you remove them. Alright, now to remove the timing belt, we need to loosen this 10mm nut on the tensioner, and we have to push the tensioner towards the back of the engine. Now I'm going to use my pry bar right on the belt. It doesn't matter because we're going to put a new belt on. If you're going to use the old belt, well, put something on your pry bar. Alright, now when it's in that position, we can tighten the bolt. And this will hold the tensioner away. So now we can slide our belt off. There we go. Now to get the water pump off, what we did was first we took this spring clamp right here, slid it back, and move this hose that goes to the heater core back. And then the bottom radiator hose, we did the same thing. We took the spring clamp, moved it back, and pried the hose off the water pump. Now we can take off these 4 10mm headed bolts to remove the water pump. Make sure you put a pan underneath there to catch any coolant that comes out. Okay, I got 1 bolt left on the pump. And once we remove that, we should be able to slide our pump out, and there she be. Okay, next I want a dry surface on there, so what I'm going to do is siphon some of this coolant out of here. Or you can use a rag or a paper towel. Okay, we're ready to put our new pump on. We got some sealant on the pump, new gasket, and we got some sealant on the block down there. Okay, we got 1 bolt started. Okay, now all we have to do is tighten those up, put the other 2 on the bottom end. Okay, we got 4 bolts all tightened on the water pump. So now all we have to do is put our hoses back into position. There's the big one, and the one to the heater core. Now we have to just slip our clamps on. Okay, we get our new water pump in place. Now we'll move on to installing the timing belt. Okay, now we're ready to put our timing belt on. Make sure that the mark on the cam pulley right here is lined up, and the crank pulley. And the tensioner right here, we want it to slide all the way back towards the firewall and tighten the bolt down so it stays in that position. Then we can install our belt. We want to get it down there on the crankshaft pulley. Now some of these early 1.9s, like this one right here, had either square tooth or round tooth on the pulleys. So make sure you check that out if you got a 91. Now we want all the tension on the radiator side of the belt. So stretch that nice and tight. Get the tension out of there. Now let's get that over the water pump. Okay, now keeps wanting to come off the crank pulley down there. Just about there. Let's move this out just a little bit. There we go. Put that on the pulley. Alright, she's all in place, and it doesn't look like the pulley's moved. Okay, now we want to loosen that bolt on the tensioner so it puts tension on the belt. There we go. Okay, now we want to turn the crank pulley 2 revolutions here. And we want to bring the mark back on the, line it up with the case right there. And now we want to double check the mark on the cam pulley. Okay, see, if you look right through the window here, you can see that the pointer is lined up with the hole in the cylinder head, and that is correct. Now we can tighten the bolt on the tensioner. And that's it. Now it's just a matter of putting the cover back on, crank pulley, everything you took off, and that's it. You've just changed a timing belt on your Ford 1.9 liter engine.